Almost everybody has some fears. And in fact, almost anything can be feared and probably is by someone or another. This is illustrated by a list that I have compiled here of recognized but strange fears. I'm going to just list off the top 13 of these recognized phobias, these recognized fears that are strange in their nature. Xanthophobia is number one. It's the fear of the color yellow. The second one, turophobia. That's the fear of cheese. The third one, somnophobia. That's the fear of falling asleep. Number 4, coulrophobia, the fear of clowns. It's a rather common fear I found out. Found often in children, but many adults also suffer it too. I'm told of even some celebrities that suffer it, like Daniel Radcliffe and Johnny Depp. I have a fear of clowns. Hylophobia is number 5. That's fear of trees. Number 6, omphallophobia. That is a fear of belly buttons. Nomophobia, and this could only happen in this present age. Number 6, nomophobia is a fear of being outside mobile phone coverage. Number 8, ombrophobia is a fear of rain. Number 9, papaphobia is a fear of the Pope. Number 10, uranophobia is a fear of heaven. Number 11, pognophobia is the fear of beards. Number 12, trypophobia is a fear of objects with small holes in them. And the number 13 on our list of 13 strange but real phobias is, of course, triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13. You know, fears, whether they're rational or unrational, irrational, are very real with those that deal with them. They're very real to the people that suffer from them, and they often have significant negative impact on the lives of those that allow them to rule them. But I want to tell you this morning that the believer need not be held hostage by their fears, even of those things that may pose a real and imminent danger to us. We do not need to fear. Those things that could harm life and limb, we do not need to fear. Our text this morning is Psalm 27, verses 1 through 5, where we find these words. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the defense of my life. Whom shall I dread? When evildoers came upon me to devour my flesh, my adversaries and my enemies, they stumbled and fell. Though a host encamp against me, my heart will not fear. Though war rise against me, in spite of this, I will be confident. One thing I have asked from the Lord, and that I shall seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to meditate in his temple. For in the day of trouble he will conceal me in his tabernacle. In the secret place of his tent he will hide me. He will lift me up on a rock. Now I want you to see, first of all, in our text this morning, that we are going to face opposition. Our passage is pretty plain in the context of what it has to say here, that we're going to be opposed in this world. Now some people, of course, are always saying that if we have real faith, that if we are dependent upon God, that if we have trusted in him, then we're going to live this golden life. We're going to live this charmed life. Nothing bad is going to happen to us. And if bad things happen to us, well, that's the proof that we haven't had enough faith, that we've been unfaithful in some way or another to God. They believe that once we've come to God, we should live charmed lives free of any kind of struggle or strife. I'd say to those people that they ought to read their Bible. Look to the most prominent people of God that we have listed in the Scriptures, both the Old Testament and the New Testament. You see people that were going through extremely difficult circumstances despite their faith. Look to the list of the great people of faith in Hebrews. All these people that are listed as examples of faith were people that were showing faith in extreme circumstances, very difficult circumstances in their lives. Look at the lives and the deaths of the apostles, these men of faith who were the long voice for God at the beginning of the church there, were people who suffered and died for the cause. Over and over again, we see that you'll find that the most faithful have never been exempt from suffering, from trials, from persecution. Those things are part of our experience here in this present world. In fact, we were never promised ease in this world. We were never promised that our way would be easy or that our burden would be light in this present world. Our passage doesn't cite faith in God as a formula to free us from hardship. It's quite the opposite. It speaks plainly of the hardships faced by God's faithful ones in this world. Notice that what the psalmist testifies to, this man who's pouring his heart out to God, this man of extreme faith, this man that was loved by God. Notice what he's saying in this passage he experiences in his life. He identifies evildoers who are looking to destroy his body, adversaries and enemies, an army encamped against him, a war fought for the sole purpose of destroying him. All are listed here as he described what he faces in a day of trouble. No, there's no exemption. There's no exemption from troubles for the faithful. We're going to experience troubles in this present world. And for all those people who are tempted to cry out against God or to abandon Him in the face of painful circumstances, let me remind you that this is not the place of your reward. And God never promised you ease here. Having a relationship with God doesn't mean God is going to coddle us. It wouldn't be good for us if God put bumpers on us and protected us from every sharp edge. It wouldn't allow for men to have freedom either to choose to live for Him. Because what choice would there be if all we could do is live for Him? If we could not rebel against Him? The choice to choose Him must mean a choice to choose to reject Him. And the choice to choose to reject Him means the choice to do evil in this world and affect the lives of other people with that evil. Almost always, those who revolt against God will leave pain in their wake. They will leave suffering on innocent people. In fact, those who belong to the Lord will often be the target of the rebellious simply because they do belong to Him. There is suffering in this world that we're going to have to endure. But the thing is at the heart of the passage that I want you to see this morning, our second point, is that God is greater than anything we have to fear. Our God is bigger than anything that we would have to fear in this world. Notice what this passage says about God's ability to overcome the things that we would fear. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? He says here. He is our light. He pierces through the darkness of the sin of this world to reveal that way in which we should go. How can we know where to turn to when we are lost in darkness, when we're fumbling around, stumbling and tripping into things in the dark? Spiritually, that was our condition before Jesus came. We were lost in the dark and we did not know the way. And try as hard as we might to get in the direction that we thought was the way to success, we were mistaken. There is a way which seems right to man, and its end is destruction. We know the truth that Jesus came to reveal the way to us. He came to shed light. He is our light. He knows the way. And He's revealed the way that we could not know. He has illuminated the path. He is our light and He is our salvation. The psalmist says here, our salvation. He brings us through to victory. This world is a place of trials, as we've already mentioned. We are here on a journey to the place of perfect security. But we're going through a danger zone. We're going through a war zone onto that place of perfect security. There are forces who are opposed to us that would overwhelm us. But we have one who has championed our cause, a protector who will watch over us every step of the way. And by his mighty protection, no foe can steal our salvation. No foe can rip our success, our victory from us, because our God is our salvation. The psalmist goes on to say here in this passage, the Lord is the defense of my life. Whom shall I dread? You know, we might, in this world, fear the things that can happen to our bodies. After all, we live in clay pots. We live in fragile vessels. Things can happen to this physical form that take us under pretty fast. Injury and illness assault us. Our bodies know stress and fatigue. And if it wasn't enough of the things that can naturally occur to these fragile physical forms that we live in, there are also those in this world who are unscrupulous and can attack our bodies or threaten to harm us. We become the victims of predators in this violent world. We don't know when those who are wicked around us will attack. At any moment, we might be subject to someone who intends to do harm. Even as we sit now in a church building, there have been churches where armed men have come in and killed people and caused great disruption in the services. We don't know of any moment of perfect safety. Right when we're going through our regular routine, something can happen which will affect us in this physical form. I've shared with you before, but back in 1973, I was going to school full-time, college, and in the evening, at nighttime, I was working at Stan's Mobile Service Station, at a gas station. I was the only worker at night. He cut way back on his crew at night, even though we were going through the gas shortage at that time, and cars would line back up sometimes to the freeway. But I was alone at the station, and a man came in and said that he had run out of gas on the freeway, and he wondered if I had a gas can that he could take, buy some gas and take it out to his car. So I went back in the Bay Area to look for an empty gas can for him to use, and he followed me back in the Service Bay Area, and I told him, you can't be back here. But when I turned around to tell him that, there was a gun pointing in my face. Now, I was going to school all day long and working all night long. There really wasn't time for sleep, so when that man had the gun in my face, I didn't recognize it at first. I didn't realize what was happening. What he told me to do didn't make any sense. And so I just sort of stood there with a dumb look on my face as he held the gun pointed at me. To get my attention, he pistol whipped me. And he got my attention pretty fast then, and told me to give him whatever cash he had on hand. His partner came in, also holding two other people at gunpoint that had pulled into the pumps. And they took us to the back room and took all the cash we had on us. He demanded to know where the rest of the money was. He was sure that there was more money in the service station. I didn't tell him. And so he had us stripped down, naked, lie on the floor, hog-tied us to wear our clothes, threatened if anybody got up that they would get shot. I found out later that we were very fortunate that this same pair of people that had been robbing service stations had killed a number of gas station attendants in their crime spree. I was just going about my regular routine. When I went to the station that night, there was no way that I knew anything terrible was going to happen. There weren't vultures sitting on top of the service station. There wasn't a black cloud hanging right over there. There wasn't ominous music playing in the background. I was doing the same thing I did every night, going to Stan's Mobile Service Station to work out my 9-hour shift. And it happened when I didn't expect it. At any moment, we can be accosted. At any moment, our bodies might be delivered over to those who intend to do evil to us. In periods of persecution, Christians have often been threatened with harm or have been tortured, mutilated, even put to death for their faith. Some in fear renounce their faith to escape any physical harm. But when we know His protection, He can give us victory over the things that would hurt us. You know, our bodies are temporary anyway. They aren't going to last. They all run out after a while. They all get worn out, even if we have a long life in this world. They aren't meant to be forever. They can destroy the body, but they can't touch who we are. And when it talks about the Lord being our deliverer, it's not saying that people are not going to inflict harm on our bodies, or that we're not going to suffer from long illnesses or injuries in our bodies. But it's saying He's going to deliver us from that. After all, what is momentary suffering when there's an eternity of bliss ahead of us? All that we suffer in this physical form is going to be forgotten in short order when we stand in His presence someday. They can hurt us, they can kill our bodies, but He holds our life. He is our deliverer. No illness, no injury, no persecution has any lasting effect on us, because He is our defense. The psalmist goes on to say, "For in the day of trouble He will conceal me in His tabernacle. In the secret place of His tent He will hide me." You know, the tabernacle represented the presence of God among His people. That was to be the place where God literally dwelt in the midst of His people. So when the psalmist is talking about in the day of trouble, God hiding him in the tabernacle, he's talking about God enfolding him into His presence. He's protected because God is there to surround him and to keep him safe. He is hidden in the Lord. It says also here, He will lift me up on a rock. We might be mired in a bog, or we might be sinking in quicksand, but He lifts us up and puts us on secure footing, on solid rock. He delivers us to a place of safety. All that the psalmist has to say here about God's deliverance, God's salvation, God being sufficient to meet all of our needs and all of our fears, I want to say this to you: it requires our knowledge of Him and our willingness to trust in Him. The psalmist, going through all the things that he's noted in this text, all the opposition that he is facing in his life, still trusts in God, and he sees in God His answer to all the fearful things going on in his life, even as they're happening. Well, I'll tell you this morning that for our fears to be answered by His presence in our life, we can't just pay lip service to His power over all things. We have to know it as a truth. We have to believe it and trust it with our lives. We have to be willing to trust ourselves to Him when the fearful things are assaulting us. Imagine a bridge crossing a huge ravine. There's no way to cross this ravine except across this bridge. But even as that bridge stands there to allow people to cross over to the other side, nobody will be able to make it to the other side if they don't trust their weight to the bridge. You can believe logically that bridge will hold me. That bridge is the way that I can get there, but you aren't going to make it to the other side unless you're willing to put your weight on it as well, until your belief turns into trust. And it's the same thing for us in our relationship with God. Our belief needs to turn into trust if He's going to be able to protect us from all our fears. He has the strength. He's willing to intercede in our behalf, but it's only if we will rely on Him. One other thing I want you to see in our text this morning, and that's this: our greatest desire should be to be with Him, knowing He is our security. Even trusting that He is sufficient in our daily lives is not enough. As much as we may want to be secure, we will stray from His safety if only self-interest causes us to turn to Him. If it's only a matter of trying to escape from the terrible things and from our fears, we're never going to be able to remain faithful in Him. When were we ever able to continue in a direction that we really didn't want to go in, simply because it was the best way for us? I mean, every dieter probably knows that, don't they? You can try and try and try for months, but it makes it hard to stay on that path after a certain while because it's not what you really want to do. Ultimately, we resent the way and we depart from it. The only way we can remain safe in Him is to have a sincere love for Him, which is expressed in a passion for His presence. When we love Him enough to want to be with Him, that's when we remain safe in Him. Listen again to what the psalmist says here in this passage. He says, "One thing I have asked from the Lord, that I shall seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord, and to meditate in His temple." This is not out of place in this psalm. This fits in perfectly with what he's talking about, being able to overcome fears because of the power of Jesus Christ, by the power of God. It's the love for God, the desire to be with Him, that gives us that assurance that He is with us always, and that He will never leave us or forsake us. People who are indifferent to the presence of God, people for whom it is a chore to be involved in the worship of His church, are never going to be able to maintain a walk with Him. Those who dwell in His safety are the ones who delight in worship and praise. They're the ones who want more than anything else to be God's people and to be in His presence. What did Jesus say was the greatest commandment? You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. See, because it's only as we love Him that it means anything to have a relationship with Him, that it's ever going to last, to be meaningful for us. Only as we sincerely want to be with Him will we stay with Him and be freed from all the things which would cause us to fear. Well, it brings us to our invitation time this morning. We're reminded by John in 1 John chapter 4, verse 18, "There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfected in love." Perfect love casts out fear. Love for God, a sincere love for God, means we have nothing to fear any longer. So this morning, the choice is before you. Will you love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your being? Or will you live according to your fears? This morning, if you'd like to have Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, if you'd like to come for the first time, we have an invitation time. If you'd like to renew your commitment to live in love with Him and to know His safety, we want you to have an opportunity to renew your commitment. We invite you to come forward as we stand and sing our invitation song, "His name is